Thank you, JJ Kioria. We're coming to you live from the Friedrich Naumann Foundation, where Policy is currently celebrating World Safer Internet Day, especially for scribes. And with me, I have Irene from Policy. Irene, if you could just tell us, especially on the digital domain, we see a lot of internet users, or we see a lot of scribes going onto there and expanding their knowledge in that sense. Could you just tell us, what is this day for journalists?
This wonderful day is commemorated every 7th February of every year since 2004. And actually, it's a clarion call for every citizen to understand what it is all about. But for journalists, specifically in Kenya and Uganda, as Policy, we were able to conduct a needs assessment to understand how you use the internet, you use digital tools, and use social media. And we found that there are so many wonderful things that many of you women journalists you use for. And some of the key findings, we found that it is important for women journalists in school, the curriculums to change to inform women journalists to understand the role of the internet in their lives. We also found that it is important for women journalists to organize, just as you have organized for your media houses. It's important to organize yourselves and report against the wonderful uses in which you use the internet for. This will promote safe usage for the internet for women and girls in Africa, and it will also promote the continuous usage of the internet, because as we know, the internet currently is being used for so many wonderful things such as education, economic empowerment, where you can be able to have a shop, a virtual e-commerce shop. So we also found that many media houses are giving room for journalists to engage digitally. Many of you have started launching your own podcasts in your own rights as individuals. You have empowered your communities using your podcast. We were able to find that beyond all these wonderful things that women journalists are doing in Kenya and in Uganda, there still remains a bit of a lag in terms of our policy guidelines. Our media houses don't have code of conduct that promote safe internet usage for women journalists and actually journalists themselves, in that when you are aggrieved for sharing news, which is public information, the harm comes to you online. And we found that it is important for some of the codes of conduct in your media houses to be updated to inform these new ways of working, and also to have national guidelines by the Media Council Association of Kenya and other institutions that really host you as journalists to really inform better policy guidelines and legislation that promote for safe internet usage. Yeah.
Irene, maybe if we could just veer back to, or rather, if we could just concentrate on the journalistic aspect, especially women journalists and scribes. Could you just tell us, now that you've talked about policies and how they are not really adequate, what are some of the things that can be done by media houses and by the government in order to enhance this?
Wow, thank you very much for that. The opportunities are beyond immeasurable. One, university-going media students should be able to start crafting a niche on reporting on issues to do with digital transformation in the different African countries. And for Kenya, as we know, our own president on 12th of December, he declared it the Tech Day. That is him showing full support and full support, and just a clarion call for people to be able to support his digital agenda. He sees the power of technology in our lives. Therefore, students in media schools, journalists in media houses have a new niche, or have a niche to continue to engaging in. And this is room for you to be able to explore, so that you can be able to show the plight of women journalists themselves and the role that technology informs in their lives.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Irene. And maybe if we could just talk about the fact that internet penetration is so high in Kenya at the moment, and maybe we could use these spaces in order to ensure that not only news, but media content can reach the people much faster. With me, I have another guest. If you could just tell us, considering the fact that journalists right now are going into the digital space, what are some of the things that can be done? And maybe introduce yourself. You're currently live on News Check KBC.
Okay, my name is Grace Gidai. Tiger. I convene KICTANET, that's the Kenya ICT Action Network. We are a multi-stakeholder platform that deals in ICT policy and regulation. Now, the question you have just raised, a day like today, a Safer Internet Day, we know it was set aside, of course, to celebrate, a safer internet for children and young people. But for women journalists and even journalists generally, I think it's a very important day. One, for journalists to start engaging in safety issues. What are those safety issues online? Number two, the media has now converged with the internet. And so we find that media organizations also have digital channels. So what are those safety concerns that all journalists must be alert to? And there are many, there are issues of, changing your password every 3 months, having a strong password, that's a password that has symbols, that has numbers, that has capital letters, or coming up with a vernacular, phrase that you don't forget. I keep saying, for example, where I come from, like if you use Madhawadhanio to 2023, nobody will ever guess such a password. So there are those. And then there is the whole question of just cyber hygiene that journalists need to be cyber hygienic. What do we mean by that? It's the same thing we say when we tell you about your undergarments, that you keep them clean, you keep them away from people, and you want to ensure that you smell good. So it is the same thing that we are actually calling on journalists. Cyber hygiene, learn the practices, keep clean online, maintain digital safety. Digital literacy is very important, and that's what I'll call all journalists to do.
Thank you so much. And we're even getting new concepts at this point. We're talking about cyber hygiene, and the matter has expanded not only to journalists, but to Kenyans in general. If you could just tell us, cyber hygiene, what is cyber hygiene? And maybe if we can even shift and talk about policies that you could recommend in order to ensure that Kenya in general has safer internet.
Hi, my name is Patience Nyange. I'm the Executive Director at the Association of Media Women in Kenya. I'm very happy to be part of this session today and to just engage with our women here who are journalists from the various media houses. We're talking about safer internet. What we're trying to do is really to try and understand that digital platform has come our way, and therefore how do we protect ourselves? It's a space that we can't run away from. It's a space that we're happy to engage with, but then how do we stay safe? So part of the conversation today is for us to really understand the conduct of ourselves online, the conduct of how you respond to insults, how you respond to abuse, how you respond to threats online. So, and I know women within journalism spaces, because all our work is online. All our work is out there. Most of the time we become victims of cyberbullying, trolling and threats. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to ensure that we have safe internet. We are discussing about the policies that can come in place that can, if someone has probably constantly been trolling you, how do you report? What are the mechanisms in place? What are some of the authorities within our laws that can easily, take your case and make sure that many people really feel safe online? Women, specifically women in media, women in politics and leadership, are women always who really claim that their spaces is always threatened because there are a number of cyberbullying there are cases of cyberbullying that happen. So we want to ensure that our authorities, or we have policies that can be implemented to protect women journalists, to protect women within this space, and the Kenyans, all users of internet. So part of those is cybercrime policies that are already in place. We just want to ensure that they are implemented and people can really learn. Part of the things that we want to do is also to ensure that there is a training to see that people understand how they can keep themselves safe online. The other thing that we also want to see is to try and ensure that we have civic education for people understanding that this is how you use digital space. It gives you a good platform for engagement, but even as you do that, let's be kind to each other. That's what we're calling for.
Thank you so much, Patience. That is Patience from the Association of Media Women in Kenya, calling, or rather ensuring, or rather speaking about the fact that we need safer internet spaces, not only for women, but for women journalists, and maybe even more cyber security laws in place in order to ensure that we have safe spaces.